Okay, hello, good morning. Hopefully the audio is way better today. I watched a lot of tutorials yesterday, and it's just so much work to get like good audios. I have some plugins and some equalizing and stuff like that, and hopefully this works out a lot better. Got some sleep tonight, feeling way better today. And also, yeah, so yesterday we were working on the implementation of the styled API. And as I mentioned, Fabrice built this with me, like Stitches. We had this whole thing where we built this library called Classy UI, which had this really novel idea on how to deal with styling. And then it suddenly turned out, and we actually released it, and then we realized that, oh shit, it should actually be a runtime thing, because it was like a pure bubble plugin. Anyways, I have tons of videos on that if you want to look at that. But yeah, so we got to this place, and then we talked about refactoring. So what Fabrice did, and I can't, like, I should have thought of this first. He put this stuff into Code Sandbox. It's just copy the code in, and now we can actually see it running, which is really nice. And we talked a little bit back and forth on how to deal with optimizations. So currently, we have, if you remember, we're working on our styled instance. So when we can see here. So in this case, let me make it a little bit bigger. Oh, yeah, this is nice. This is nice. So when we call our API, for example, button here, that is when we enter this styled instance. This is where we pass in the base styling and the variants. And we talked about optimizations, and we're using React Memo here to build, to keep around the base styling because it's static, it doesn't change. The same goes for the variants. They don't change, so we can just evaluate them instantly, and then we're all good. Yes, and then we go through the properties to see if there's a variant there, and then we compose it together, and that builds up a class name. Now, what I realized suddenly is that I think we can, the point is that every time you use a button, the first time it renders, it will create that React Memo thing. But it doesn't really need to do that. We can keep this around across instances of this button. So what we're going to try to do, and the nice thing now, we can just test it. By the way, kind of cool that we wrote all this code and it actually worked. Even the styling worked. No, sorry, the typing. But yeah, so in this function, we're kind of creating a closure here. So we're returning the component here, and here we have this closure. And that means that this closure is available across all the instances of the button, which means that we could basically, if I'm thinking correctly here, we should be able to say like base styles like this, and also evaluated variants like this. And then we say, let's call it something else. Not like something cross global shared base styles. Yes, let's call it shared evaluated variant. So it's kind of shared across all the component instances. So what we'll do here is that we'll check to see, do we have the shared thing? And if not, we're going to build it. And then the same for evaluated variants. If we have shared evaluated variants, we're going to use it, or if not, we're going to build it. And we're going to do a little trick here. We're going to use an iffy. Immediately invoked function expression, I think is the name for that. And again, let's any this stuff up. So we got it running. Yes. And that's basically it. So, oh yeah, now it forked. Yeah, and it's still working. So do we have button? We have button here, and we have multiple buttons, and the styling is working and everything. So yeah, this was a really nice optimization. So I hope that made sense. So this scope is shared across all buttons. And then only the first time you actually create a button, that is when it builds the base style and the shared evaluated variant or the evaluated variants. After that, it doesn't do anything. The only thing it does is compose together what should actually be part of this. Cool. There might be something we're not thinking of here, but that should actually work. And you might say, like, why couldn't we do this before even rendering? And we could technically do that, but the problem is that we have only access to our CSS instance through React. So when React starts rendering, that is when we get access to the CSS instance. As I talked about yesterday, we want libraries to be able to pick up the CSS instance from the components. So you can like easily add custom tokens and stuff like that. It would be way trickier to make libraries understand what is your configuration without this mechanism, because then you would have to like point into the library and they would have to implement some global mechanism to kind of make it possible for their components to access your configuration. Using the context of React, it's very straightforward. It's a very typical pattern. Yeah, and like the optimizations we're doing here is for like intense apps, because something like Code Sandbox, because Stitches is insanely fast. We've been benchmarking it against other tools, and it's the fastest. Like they benchmark in milliseconds. So it's either equal or faster than the other solutions out there. Yeah, so this, and the funny thing with those benchmarks, it's just a pure render. So it doesn't take into account that if you have an app where you have tons of styling and you keep rendering, you know this, like if you use React, you might have some component that like renders 20 times or something. Because that's just how React works. But you don't want to reevaluate the styling for that stuff every time. It's quite expensive. So yeah, this is pretty cool. So what I thought we could do now, we have this other implementation we wanted to do as well. And that was to be able to override the styling. And we want to also optimize that, so that we ensure that when you try to optimize, override the styling, you do so in an optimized way. I'll get more into that. But first, let's make sure that we fix this. So we should do the props first, then we put in the ads, and then if there is a class name here, we're going to say props class name, and then we're going to insert our class name so that we don't override any other class names. Oh, we need a comma here. By the way, I'm going to turn off this, turn that one off. Cool. Yes, and then, yeah, that's the class name. And then we are going to look into this override thingy. Okay, so what if I wanted to override the button here? So I could do something like style color blue. And that of course works because it's an inline style. And this is what we're encouraging when you have, for example, when you're animating something or you're dragging something around where you have values that update very frequently. You want to do that with an inline style. But also sometimes you do want to do something more heavy, like you want maybe a hover effect that you want to override. So we're going to allow that, and we're going to allow that behind a property called style. So that's like a special property that that we allow. And then we are going to, let's see, we are going to allow you to do override is styled. Let's see if this works. So we have created just a style up here, and this is what we're going to override with. Oops, override. And currently this doesn't do anything. Oh, style is not a function. Oh, this is weird. Create style. This is not a function. Oh, is it missing something? Oh, didn't we implement that maybe? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, but then we have some stuff to do here, because yeah, we have our styled instance. Yes, we haven't implemented this. Cool. Now the question is, should we implement this? Because really, yeah, I guess we should. Or should we? Because we don't have access to the CSS instance. Okay, this is interesting. I haven't thought of this. So we just want to create a style thing here. Though what we could do is, yeah, this is interesting for sure. Because what we could say is that whenever you want to override something, we could say you need to use the normal composition tool. So we don't like overload the API here. Because, yeah, I think, well, no, we can return a function there. Yeah, no, okay, let's try this. We're going to try it, see how it feels like. So we're going to allow styled like this. And the way we can figure that out is, let's bring up the console here as well. So it's saying that it's not a function, and that, I guess that's correct, because what we're doing now is we are returning a proxy here, and we're trying to call it. So what we rather want here is it should rather be a function. Does it start complaining about this? This is so annoying. Does that help? Yeah. Yeah, and what we're going to do is that, so this style thing, return here, this is a proxy, which means that whenever we dot into it, it triggers this stuff. So this is how we handle like the style dot button, but we're not catching this call. And the way we catch that call is by adding apply. So what we get here is like the target, which would be actually this empty function here, which doesn't do anything. And then we get the disarg, which we don't care about. Sorry about that, it's my phone. Yeah, added like a noise gate, so you probably didn't hear my phone, I think. Anyways, and then we have our arguments list. And I guess there's only one argument here, so we have like the different styles, something. Okay, so this is for calling the function, and what we want to return here. What do we want to return? We want to return a function that, so we're getting a function there, and we want to basically just return that function. That's actually what we want to do. This is interesting. This is very interesting. So we actually just want to return the callback. Yeah, that's actually what we want. This is very interesting. Okay. So what happens now is that what we're passing into override here is the that function, and we'll fix the typing here. But we return the function on style, and then we need to handle it. So what we want to do is for our compositions, we want to make sure that the last thing we do is to add that. So if we have props.styled, we basically just want to add that to our composition. So we call it and we pass in the CSS instance. Yeah, this is pretty awesome. I think this will work. Let's see. And it complains, it still says it's not a function. Yeah, we'll figure that one out. Yeah, let's see what this actually ends up as being. Oh, the styling works now. Oh yeah, it wasn't, sorry, styling typing, I'm confusing it. It wasn't a typing issue. We already had typed this. It was like an error. That's why it didn't work. So override, we're passing it in, but it says it's not a function, which is interesting. So let's see what we are returning when we are applying here. Oh, of course, it's an arguments list. So we need to return args 0. Cool. So now we have styled override, though it doesn't actually add the blue color here, which I would expect it to do actually. So why doesn't it do that? Let's take a look at our composition. Let's see here. Oh, do we have, oh, I think Fabrice was testing a little bit. Let's drop this effect here, because this is not going to help us now. Yes, there we are. Okay, so we have color, and we have toString. Yeah, this is interesting. I worry if this is like some part of our composition. That when we're composing this stuff together, we are not getting... Because how does this actually work in Stitches? When we have two different sets of compositions, yeah, it should bring it all together, actually. Is there something I'm not thinking about here? Why doesn't it add the color blue? Let's take a look at the element. Oops, can't see anything here. Bloop. There we have it. Let's move this element inspector to the left there. Let's see. So this is the big button. Let's take a look at it. And we have, I need to find a good place to put this. Let's put it here. Okay, cool. So it has a background color. Where is the color? And that's the color. Oh, is this the computed? Oh, sorry, here it is. Me messing up. Background color. There it has the color. And it seems to be grabbing the color from, let's see, we have button. The big color is text, which is, I guess you set up, token for that. And then I'm overriding it with my blue thingy. And why didn't it understand that this was the composition I wanted? Because it is the last item in the composition. First add it to the array and then compose it. Yeah, but shouldn't the last thing in the composition be what overrides? Oh, Sorry. Oh, of course, this is working. Of course, I'm pushing it to the array after we compose it together. I did this the last time as well. Thank you, Fabrice. My bad. Sorry for spending time on that. That was just silly. Of course, this is working. Yes. So this is yeah, awesome. So this is also working now. We don't have the what's it called? Typing, not styling, but typing for our thingy. Where is our polymorphic? Where is our polymorphic thing? There we are. Okay, so we're saying blah, blah, blah. This is the variance we're adding as props. And we also want to add this style thing, which we actually want to be we actually want this to be, well, I guess, so we're calling that with a callback, and we're saying that we're returning a string. So actually what we get back here should actually be a string. Yes. So let's say this is a string. And it's optional. You don't have to. Oh, that was the wrong place. P in. Oh, wait. No, it's correct. It's correct. Styled string. No, what am I doing here? I'm doing something wrong. Can't I add like dynamic? Oh, sorry. Sorry. Me and my typing. We need to do this, of course. Yes. So now we have everything running. Now the thing is, what we're actually going to do, I have a meeting at 9, so I might have to abruptly quit, but I really want to squeeze this in. Now the thing is, this is working and we're kind of properly using this now. But what we could also do, we might have put it in here instead. And that still works. That's perfectly okay. But it's not what we want you to do. There's no reason to do this because, as mentioned again, I'm saying it over and over, is that everything's static. So ideally, we want you to put it up here. So how can we detect this? And my theory is that even though we're saying that we're returning a string here, it's actually not a string. Which means that if we have it, it's actually an object with a toString method on it. That is why it's kind of like a string. It coerces to a string. Yeah. Or maybe that's not the right way to say it. Anyways, if you tell it to be a string, it will become a string. Or it will evaluate its insides into a string. Okay, no matter. The point is that we actually return an object here. And now in this case, this object will be new every time. But if we define it up here, the object will be the same every time. So we should be able to do some checking in here. Basically, as we do here, props.style. So if we were to, okay, this is interesting. Yes. So let's just try it. Same styled. What it does do though is that you can't do like dynamic styled. But then again, you should rather have, yeah, so if you want that dynamic behavior, yeah, this is interesting. I'm not sure if this is a good thing. Maybe we shouldn't care about this too much because it's not what you would commonly do. What you would commonly do is to use the variance for dynamic behavior. But again, you have this concept of an override, which is important. What I'm saying is that if you wanted this override to be dynamic, like you have some there, or you want null, for example, you only want to override it in specific scenarios, then it would actually throw an error. But we could also just give a warning, of course, like, hey, you're changing out the override. Are you sure you want to do that? But again, that from an API perspective, that might be a little bit annoying. So, but just for fun's sake, let's see if we can actually detect it first, and then we'll have to decide like on the API design of it. So I think we can like use memo here. And then we're going to use props styled. And then, oh, can we on use memo? Do we get the current use memo? No, we don't. Well, no, we don't. How should we, how can we be, how will we be able to, I think this is like an issue in React that you can, like with the hooks and stuff, that comparing props, like the previous props with new props is, if it's even possible, it's tricky. Because what we're doing here is that we don't have access to the previous value. We only have, well, we could, yeah, okay, so we could do this. So what we'll do is that, yeah, because we don't want it to change at all. So what we can do is say props style. So this will be the initial style. So this will always be the same. Yeah, complaining. It's amazing that they got like to use hooks safely, you kind of have to use a linter, which I find really fascinating. Like anyone else trying to pitch an API and saying that, by the way, to use this properly, you have to use a name convention and you should use a linter to use it correctly. Like only the React team could ever get that through. Like Hooks API is super powerful, but it's insanely difficult to use in certain scenarios. It's quite mind-bending. Anyways, so what we should be able to do here, if same style is not equal to prop style, throw new error. This is not working. Oh, I have to go very soon. Yeah, let's bring back our little effect here. Let's see what happens. This is not working. That's right. But if I move it up here, it's working. Yay! Okay, so then we just have to decide, is this a good API design or not? But it is actually working. So we're super optimizing this. We're making sure that all our styles are static. The dynamic behavior is in the variants. So there's no like re-evaluation, only the first time you render a component. After that, it's just finding the correct class names. And then we even made it like cross instance with our new variables here. And then with the overrides, we even made that a check for that. So it makes sure that you're doing that correctly. Okay, I really have to go, but one last thing. I implemented object syntax yesterday in Stitches so that you can do like this thing. It's actually ready, but it's not documented. It's even released. But I think tomorrow that we should bring that into this thing, and then we'll release it. And was there anything more? No. Yeah, and also I implemented theme support, which is super, super awesome. I want to talk about that as well. So yeah, let's spend one more day with Stitches tomorrow, and we'll wrap up the week publishing it and actually using it in our app. And that will set us up for continuing on our app next week. I actually have vacation, so I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do the stream, but I'll figure something out and let you know. Okay, cool. This was awesome. Thanks for following along, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.